Who are the best wide receivers in the NFL going into the 2025 season? Well, I'm about to rank 75 different receivers, which you can see on your screen now. And I'm not only going to rank them, I'm going to put them into tiers, which you can see on your screen now. So the first tier is the elite tier. These guys are the alpha wide receiver ones, the best of the best. They can take over a game all by themselves. They can produce with or without their quarterback. They are scheme versatile. Put them in any sort of situation in the NFL, and these guys are going to succeed. Then we have the great tier, one step down. These guys are still wide receiver ones, but they're just not quite in that elite tier. I'm happy for them, if they were on my team, to be the number one guy. They're still very, very good. Well, they're great. They're just not elite. Then the next step down, we have the good receivers. These are what I like to call the wide receiver 1.5s. Not quite good enough to be a wide receiver one all by themselves, but also not bad, quote unquote, enough to be a wide receiver two. These guys are kind of caught in the middle, a little bit of they might be lacking some physical tools, or they might mostly play in the slot. Something in some way withholds them from being that true number one option for a team. Then we have a dynamic role player. These are guys who might just be great at only one thing. They might be purely slot players. They might only work the short area of the field. They might be deep threats. They might be speedsters. Guys who are really valuable to an offense, but not quite as well-rounded as maybe the 1.5s and the guys ahead. Then we have the wide receiver, the high-end wide receiver twos. These guys are, as it suggests, the really good wide receiver twos who maybe on other teams might be a wide receiver one, but are probably best suited to being just a really good two. Then we've got our run-of-the-mill wide receiver twos, a great backup option, a great wide receiver two. And at the bottom, we have the wide receiver threes. These are guys who are best reserved for being the third option on an offense. Now, as you can see, we have a load of guys here. Some teams only have one or two players. Some teams have four. That's because some teams have better wide receiver cores. Now, this is not an exclusive list. If you don't see your team's wide receiver on here, then I'm sorry. It's not to say they're not good, but they're just not ones that I thought were worth ranking. These are what I loosely think of as the top, almost notable kind of 70 receivers in the NFL. I'm also not including players who are injured and who are going to miss significant time in 2025, like Tank Dell and Christian Watson. And before we get into it, I just want to say that I do not care about what role on the offense these guys currently play or are technically playing. For example, Kendrick Bourne and Demario Douglas are, technically speaking, wide receiver one and wide receiver two of the Patriots, and that would also mean that T. Higgins is a wide receiver two. That does not mean that T. Higgins is going to go in the wide receiver two category. Spoiler alert. This is about what you're capable of, what you could and what you should be playing in an ideal world. So let's get into the rankings. And we're going to start our rankings with Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver for the Cardinals. And unfortunately, Marvin Harrison Jr. had quite an underwhelming rookie campaign. He did have 885 yards and 8 touchdowns, which in a vacuum really isn't that bad, but considering how high the expectations were for Marvin Harrison Jr., and also the fact that he was coming out in a very strong rookie wide receiver class with the likes of Vlad McConkey, Malik Nabers, and Brian Thomas Jr. all having fantastic seasons, it just makes that 800-yard season look all the more underwhelming. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s biggest problem last year wasn't that he's not talented or not capable. He clearly is. But him and Kyler Murray were just not on the same page at all last year, specifically with back shoulder passes. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. being a bigger-bodied wide receiver, being someone that might lack the agility and the speed of, say, a Malik Nabers or a Vlad McConkey, means that he needs those kind of passes to be on target for him to make a play. He's not going to necessarily burn you down the sideline, but he is going to make a play on the ball in the air. And the back shoulder passes were just nowhere. The ball location was just not where it needed to be. Either Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't being strong enough through contact and then couldn't make a play, or if he was, then it was Kyler Murray was sailing that ball over his head or too far behind him or too far in front of him. And I think by being that kind of more old school of a wide receiver and lacking that explosiveness, he does have that vulnerability of not being able to just create his own separation and being open and being a target that his quarterback can hit come hell or high water. And I think we saw that with the Cardinals last year, with Kyler Murray having those growing pains, definitely. And the fact that he only had a 42% contested catch rate for a player of his caliber, for someone that needs to be better in that realm, that's not great. Now, I've seen Marvin Harrison Jr. already put on quite a lot of mass over this offseason. He looks a lot more bulky, noticeably so, in his pressers. And I think he is going to get better at that game. And I'm not worried about his development. But I do think that for the time being, He's going to just be in the wide receiver 1.5s, I think, and that might be a bit generous, but I am basing that off what we've seen in college as well. It's not just the NFL. If it was just the NFL, then maybe I'd put high-end wide receiver 2. But knowing what we know about him from college, I'm not worried about Marvin Harrison Jr. And if Kyler Murray can get on the same page as Marvin Harrison Jr. and vice versa, I think we're going to see this guy really start to take the leaps that we were expecting of him last year. And there is going to be projection involved here. I've got rookies, let alone players that have played in the NFL. So I'm going to keep him in there for now. Drake London. This is who Marvin Harrison Jr. should model his game after, frankly. I mean, Drake London is a better route runner, I think, than he ever gets credit for. He's not inherently agile. You know, he is 6'4", he is 220 odd pounds, but he's got really great feet. He's got fantastic route salesmanship, really good head fakes, can move his shoulder pads as well just to try and tip the DB off in one way or the other. He had 100 receptions last year for over 1,120 yards. 9 touchdowns, 57.9% contested catch rate. When you look for a big-bodied wide receiver, point to Drake London. That's what you want them to look like, I think. And he had a lot more snaps in the slot this year. It went up from 39% from 26% last year. And Zach Robinson was using him in motion more and just getting him favorable looks against kind of favorable matchups, really. And why not help your wide receiver 1? I know you don't always need to help them. You don't always want to have to help them. But if you can make your wide receiver 1 even better, then do so. So Drake London, for me, is going to go in the great tier. I think he's so good, Drake London. I think he's so good. Trey Harris. Talking about funny projections, this guy coming from Ole Miss has maybe the funnest one of any of the rookie receivers. I liked what I saw on his tape. I saw that explosive outside wide receiver potential. Herbert is one of the best pure throwers in the game, I think, and Harris is going to benefit from that. Now, what I think Harris is going to do, the role I think he's going to fill in the offense, is he is going to be the wide receiver 2, kind of next to Lad McConkey. McConkey will be, well, I'm not going to say where I'm going to put him. You'll see when he comes round. But he's going to push down, obviously, Quentin Johnston as well. So I'm going to put Trey Harris for now in wide receiver 2, but at his ceiling, I could see him being a high-end wide receiver 2 this year. Puka Nacua. He missed 6 regular season games last year and still finished with 1,131 yards. He offers so much more to an offense than just being a great wide receiver, being a pass catcher. He fits the scheme so well, and I mean that positively. I think it might come across sometimes in this video when I'm talking about scheme and how players benefit. It seems as a negative. It's not at all. It's a bit like with the quarterbacks, how like a system quarterback is seen as being an inherently bad thing. If you're a good player and you can be elevated by your offensive system, why not take advantage of that? And Puka Nacua doesn't just get elevated by his offensive system. He elevates the entire offensive system, and he can rush the ball. He can block. He will crack down on an edge rusher coming off the end of the defensive line. He will meet a linebacker in the hole on an inside run. He is just handmade for the Sean McVay offense. He had 581 yards after the catch. That was 4th in the NFL, again, after missing significant time with an injury. He's just clutch as well. He makes big plays, made an unbelievable play against the Eagles in the playoffs. Had a game winner in the Colts, a walk-off touchdown in overtime in 2023. Puka Nacua is really, really, really good. Is he, though, better than Drake London? I'm good. They're right there together. Let's see what happens at the end. These are also, by the way, they're ranked within their tiers. DeAndre Hopkins, he's just not aged that well, unfortunately. He's going to be 33 when the season starts. He relied on and has relied on a lot of physicality, a lot of juice to his game, and that doesn't transfer as well as you get older as, say, route running, which we'll talk about with a certain Devontae Adams when we get to him. He did have 1,000 yards in 2023, but I think since 2022, we've seen Hopkins be on the decline, really. I think he's going to be a serviceable 2. And not much more than that at this point. And honestly, I'd rather have Trey Harris. At least we don't know. At least Trey Harris could give us something even more than that. I think at his ceiling, DeAndre Hopkins is now a wide receiver 2. And I think Trey Harris could be a high-end wide receiver 2. So, again, projection here. Hopkins has absolutely been better than Trey Harris, clearly. But it's about 2025 and 2025 only. So I don't really care about the legacy stuff. Jaden Higgins. I love Jaden Higgins. He was my wide receiver 3 in the draft, playing for my Texans. I think he is going to pair so well with Nico Collins. I think we will see Nico Collins' target share and yards decline naturally, just because he won't be the only healthy, functioning wide receiver on the team. So I'm going to put Jaden Higgins in the high-end wide receiver 2 spot. Now, Courtland Sutton is a really great wide receiver 2. He's got good numbers, 86 receptions, 1,156 yards, 8 touchdowns. But I feel like that's because there's no one really there to take away his target share. I mean, he is just kind of the the reward. It's the reward of playing in a Broncos offense, which doesn't have a lot of pass catchers and doesn't have a lot of mouths to feed. And I don't really think he's a wide receiver 1. I'm looking at that good tier at the wide receiver 1.5, but I'm not loving that, to be honest. I think he's got limited yards after the catch ability, only had 198 yards after the catch this year, which is why the Broncos brought in someone like Evan Ingram, who I know plays tight end, but is more of a pseudo receiver at this point in his career. I mean, he's a big-bodied guy, so he does fit the dynamic role player. Let's put him in the dynamic role player. I don't quite think he's a wide receiver 1.5. I think he's like a wide receiver 1.75, if that makes sense. So we'll keep him in the dynamic role player for now. Jordan Addison. I was a Jordan Addison doubter coming out of USC. I thought he was too small, too slow. Clearly, I was wrong. He had 911 yards in his rookie season, 904 yards last year. He is the perfect complement to Justin Jefferson. He's able to go for 162 yards against the Bears when Justin Jefferson only goes for 27. He's a really savvy, reliable wide receiver too. And when Justin Jefferson was injured in 2023 and missed quite a lot of time then, Addison was able to step up. He had 127 yards against the 49ers, but he is best as a wide receiver too. But is he more of a dynamic role player? Would I rather have Jordan Addison ahead of Courtland Sutton? I think I would. I think I would rather have Jordan Addison instead of Courtland Sutton. So I was going to put him as a high-end wide receiver too, but I'm going to put him actually as a dynamic role player. I like that. Zay Flowers. Now, he is similar-ish to Jordan Addison. You've got a smaller, shiftier, more dynamic wide receiver there. But I do think that Flowers is more dynamic than Addison. I think he's more electric with the ball in his hands. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard season. I think he's a really underappreciated weapon overall, specifically after the catch. He had 467 yards after the catch last year. And I think you can throw Flowers the ball at the line of scrimmage, wide receiver screens, for example, and you can get him making defenders miss, picking up extra yards. And I think that kind of added bit of dynamism, which I don't think Jordan Addison really offers you, means that I am going to put Zay Flowers in that wide receiver 1.5 category. Before or ahead of Marvin, I'm going to put him ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. Not because I think he's going to be better. I think what we've seen of Flowers is his ceiling. Obviously, we haven't seen Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, but right now, I think in good conscience, I can't put Marvin Harrison Jr. ahead of Zay Flowers. Keon Coleman. He did not have a great rookie season. I think we already know that Coleman isn't going to be a wide receiver 1 in any real form. I didn't love Coleman coming out from FSU either. I preferred Leggett for what it's worth. Not that Leggett looked much better, but whilst I don't love Coleman's ceiling at this point, he is clearly capable of making some big splash plays, and that's when you see him at his best, like taking a slant against, I think it was the Jets, for almost a touchdown. He can make those big plays, and that is really valuable to an offense. 13% drop rate, though, is really ugly. That has to be tidied up. You cannot be putting the ball down on the ground as a wide receiver like that. And he was injured, and I think before his injury, he was on track for a better season. We don't know how much that might have impacted him. I just don't love Keon Coleman's ceiling, though, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. I think for the time being, I think Jaden Higgins is going to be better than Keon Coleman. So, but is he a high-end wide receiver too? That's what I question. I don't think Coleman at the moment is a high-end wide receiver too. I think he's just a wide receiver too. Got a lot to prove this year. Ted McMillan. This is projection here, but he was my wide receiver 1 in the draft, and I think he's going to be the Panthers' much-needed wide receiver 1. He has the production, back-to-back 1,300-yard seasons for Arizona. Great after the catch. I don't know why people aren't talking about that more. He had 430 yards after the catch this year, 537 yards after the catch last year. He was only slightly behind Malik Nabers in career yards after the catch. And he's 6'4", 220 pounds. I think with Dave Canales, with the resurgence of Bryce Young, I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 to really kind of put the cherry on top of that offense. I think, where am I gonna put McMillan? I want the Drake London usage. I want this guy in the slot. I want him in motion. I'm gonna put him in the great tier. That's what I'm expecting from McMillan. That's what I'm expecting. Is he that now? We don't know. Again, there's projection here. He's a rookie. But based on what you know from Arizona, based on my pre-draft evaluation of him, which was thorough, I got a full breakdown of him on this channel if you want to go check that out. Make sure you subscribe, by the way. If you've got this far, definitely subscribe for more off-season NFL content. I'm gonna keep McMillan there. I like it. Now, Andre Yoshevas, I put him in here. You've got to have some wide receiver threes to fill up that wide receiver 3 tier. He is a wide receiver 3, but I think he's a pretty decent one for what it's worth. Coming out of Princeton or Purdue, one of the two, like 6th round pick. I think he does a job. Unfortunately, it's not Jermaine Burton. I was a big Jermaine Burton guy. He can't clear up his off-field issues. So I think Yoshevas is the 3rd ahead of him, but could be Burton if he ever decides to work it out. George Pickens. He's now a Dallas Cowboy. I think, now just wait till I finish what I'm going to say here. I think he's a thoroughly overrated wide receiver. Now, what I mean by that is I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's a bad receiver at all, but I think the circus catches and the highlight reels are really blurring people's vision as to what Pickens truly is, which I think is a pretty up and down, pretty hit and miss, hot and cold wide receiver who people think can be a wide receiver 1. I really don't think he can be. I don't see that for him at this point in his career personally. He is, however, a great deep threat, and he is going to be a really fantastic complement to CeeDee Lamb, who already is a wide receiver 1, spoiler alert, and who doesn't have that part to his game necessarily. Lamb can win at all 3 levels of the field, absolutely, but Pickens is really a deep threat at this point in his career. And I think he's a good one as well for what it is worth. So I'm going to put Pickens as a dynamic role player. I think he is a really good deep threat. Is he better than Jordan Addison, though? Oh, man. I know some people are going to hate where I'm going to rank George Pickens. He is someone that I just really don't see it with. They're very different style of player. I think Addison's more consistent. I'm going to keep Addison in front of George Pickens. People aren't going to like. If you agree, disagree, let me know in the comments. Give me a good reason why. I'm all ears. Nick Westbrook-Akine. This guy's been a solid wide receiver 3 for the Titans, an undrafted free agent. He's now at the Dolphins, going to add a bit more size to that receiver room. I think he's going to be really good in that role, by the way, for what it's worth. Being that they've obviously got Jalen Waddle, they got Tyreek Hill, we're going to talk about those guys, but they need that bigger body, kind of reliable wide receiver 3 that was their tight ends in the past. I think Nick Westbrook-Akine is going to pick up right where he left off in Tennessee, just being a consistently good wide receiver 3. Marvin Mims Jr., I love this guy coming out of Oklahoma. He had a disappointing rookie season. He had a slightly better 2024. But that Broncos wide receiver room, as I've said, with regards to Courtland Sutton, it's wide open. And he's not been able to carve himself out any meaningful production or really a meaningful role at all. I mean, I still believe in him. But I think at this point, he is a wide receiver 3 for the Broncos. Maybe a wide receiver 2, but it's not looking good. He's in that Sean Payton doghouse. Matthew Golden. This is a big one. He has, I would argue, the worst aura out of anyone on this list, even someone like a Quentin Johnston, let's say. You cannot wear 22, man. 22 is a DB number. Like, that is something I just cannot get on board with. I'm being out of touch maybe with the kids, but I like them being able to wear, the single-digit numbers. I like that for anyone. But a wide receiver wearing 22, I mean, look what it did to Sky Moore. He wore 24, and he's terrible. He's not even on this list. He's not a top 150 receiver, I don't think, in the league. Don't wear 20s. It is cursed. But he has chosen to wear 20, and I think that he is someone that I'm going to be a little bit low on the consensus. I have been throughout the draft process with Matthew Golden. I wasn't his biggest fan coming out of Texas. I had him as a second-round guy behind the likes of Jaden Higgins, behind even someone like a Kyle Williams, who we'll talk about for the Patriots as well when he comes up. I think he is, though, going to have a big rookie season for the Packers. I think that what he offers is that deep threat ability, and that is what Jordan Love loves throwing, like once a quarter, just a crazy YOLO deep bomb. And 2, what the Packers offense really was missing last year. And Jordan Love has that green goblin mask talking to him every time he drops back, saying, go on, throw the deep ball. And I do think that Matthew Golden will be the beneficiary of that. So I think he is going to have production. I think he is going to show that he can, obviously play in the NFL and carve himself out a meaningful role. And I think he's going to show that he is going to be a dynamic role player. And I would feel fairly confident about putting him ahead of Jordan Addison, just because I think that the Packers are going to really lean into that with Matthew Golden. We saw Christian Watson have big success as that deep threat. So I think Matthew Golden there is fair. People might want him higher. I think that's fair. I mean, he's ahead of Jaden Higgins. But I just think Matthew Golden, I prefer Higgins to Golden for what it's worth, but I think Golden has a really clear route to success and a route to production in that Packers offense. So that's it. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to say this for quite a few receivers that they're underrated, but I would argue that Amon-Ra St. Brown is maybe the most underrated. I think people consensus agree that he's very, very good, but I don't think people think that he is as good as he is. He's got a really interesting profile, right? He lacks a true like elite calling card. No, he's not got the height, not got the weight, not got the speed, not got the athleticism. Has 13 percentile arm length, 7 percentiles, 10-yard split, around a 4.61 40. But he's amazing. This guy is amazing. He leads the league in receptions from 2022 to 2024. So over the last 3 years, it's 106 receptions, 141 receptions last year, 123 receptions this year. In the short and intermediate area of the field, this guy is a killer, an absolute against zone coverage as well. Forget it. Amon-Ra is going to find the soft spot. He's going to get open. He had 802 yards after the catch in 2023. Almost 1,800 yards also in that same year of total production. He's arguably, I think, one of the most like specialized wide receivers in the league. He only had 6 receptions beyond 20 yards. Like this guy really does only operate in like the shallow end of the pool if we're equating that to an NFL field. Now the question is, I don't know if I would put Amon-Ra St. Brown in that elite category just because he doesn't offer like that full-rounded dominating all 3 levels of the field ability. But I think he's right up there. I think he's going to realistically be a top 5 wide receiver when it's all said and done on my list, but we'll see. Romeo Doubs, I mean, this guy's a pretty decent wide receiver too. We don't need to really hang that much on Romeo Doubs. I think the Packers receiver core is full of a lot of wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3s. Nico Collins, he has been, I think, pretty consistently one of the best wide receivers in the NFL over the last 2 years. He had 1,400 yards last year, 1,200 yards this year, and that was with a hip injury with an injury, and he's still producing at that level. He was averaging before his injury this season. I keep saying interchanging this and last. In 2024, to be clear, he was averaging 113 yards per game in the first 5 weeks of the season before he started to miss time. He is a dominant outside wide receiver. He's great after the catch. He's a big body guy who moves really well. His stop-start ability is fantastic. I think he's good in contested catch situations. He is one of the best wide receivers in the league. I think he's at the bottom of the elite tier, but I think he's in the elite tier. Call me a homer. He's not going to end up ahead of some of the guys. But would I have Nico Collins ahead of Amon-Ra? I think I would. Deebo Samuel. More of a hybrid player than a pure wide receiver. He's good with the ball in his hands and it's kind of when you even as a running back from time to time, but he's not great as a route runner. I think we really saw that last year when Ayuk went down. He just wasn't good as a separator, wasn't able to create separation through his route running. He struggled to be that wide receiver 1 with Ayuk being injured. And I think we saw him at his peak in 2021 when he had 1,500 receiving yards and 500 rushing yards. And he's not really hit that height since. And is he still dynamic now? At his age, he's approaching 30 years old. This might be a bit controversial, but I'm not going to say that Deebo is a dynamic role, but I'd rather have Deebo than Courtland Sutton. Would I? We'll put him at the top of high-end wide receiver 2, I think. I'm tempted to move Courtland Sutton down from the dynamic role player. I am going to move Courtland Sutton down. Sorry, Broncos fans, you got a demotion here. I'd rather have Deebo than Courtland. I think, oh God. These guys are right together. Jalen Noel, the other Texans rookie. I think Noel, I know there's going to be Nico Collins fully back healthy. I know there's going to be Jaden Higgins, who's also going to play his role in the offense. But I think Jalen Noel is going to be the beneficiary of those Tank Dell deep bombs that CJ Stroud is so good at throwing that obviously Tank Dell with his injury won't be able to fulfill. But Jalen Noel, as someone that just can get open down the field, knows exactly how to do it. CJ Stroud's one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL. We're going to see a highlight reel, I think, of Noel just catching 30-yard bombs from CJ Stroud and finishing them in the end zone. I really do. And I think he is going to produce more than Golden. But I think Higgins is a better player. This is what's tricky. I think that if we're projecting for 2025 in the Texans offense, Higgins isn't going to necessarily produce that much. I think Noel is going to have one of those like crazy, not Randy Moss, but I will say Randy Moss, stat lines, 3 catches, like 160 yards. Not quite that extreme, but just to give you an idea. I think Noel will be a dynamic role player. That's the thing. I think Higgins has a higher ceiling. I think Noel has a higher floor. And I think with Higgins, I'm hitting him more in the middle. I think by him being with Nico Collins, he's not going to be that one. And he will be that high end too. And I think that Noel might be the dynamic role player. there's a bit of nuance here, guys. I hope you're with me. I hope you're understanding my vision here. I think that Noel has a thinner range of outcomes. Thinner? Smaller? Narrower range of outcomes. I think he's going to put up minimum 800 yards. It really wouldn't shock me if Higgins was a little bit more hot and cold. And it is for 2025. Oh, man, I don't love that contradiction. Let me know where you'd have them. Would you have Higgins ahead of Noel? I did in my draft rankings. Not here, though. Jerry Judy, I'm not sold on the 2024 production. I know he had 90 receptions, 1,229 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, but the rest of his career was a middling wide receiver at best. And I think he will produce a similar level this year because there's just no one else on that Browns offense. You got Cedric Tillman, he showed flashes, but he's not really dynamic. Jerry Judy offers a little bit more than that. Don't get me wrong, it's like a route runner as well, but production doesn't equal talent here, guys. So I think really Judy is a high-end wide receiver 2, or even just a wide receiver 2. I'm going to put Judy in the wide receiver 2 tier. I think in an ideal world, you just want Judy to be your 2. Juwan Jennings. Talking about kind of an uninspiring wide receiver 2, Juwan Jennings is maybe the best wide receiver 3 in the league, right? Show me another wide receiver 3 who can put up 175 yards in a game or just consistently be a super reliable option. The role he plays as that wide receiver 3 in the offense, the Shanahan offense with the 49ers, is perfect. He's great. Yeah, he's a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 on paper. But this is what I'm saying. I'd have Juwan Jennings ahead of Jerry Judy. I would. I don't care who knows it. Brandon Cooks. Michael Pittman. Sorry. He is the definition of a wide receiver 1.5. Right? Not quite good enough to be that one. Got paid rightly so, but we've already seen that deal now kind of go to where we'd expect Michael Pittman to be paid. Kind of in that, maybe, off the top of my head, but kind of the early teens range of wide receiver contracts. I mean, like I said, he's the poster child for being a wide receiver 1.5. I would rather have Zay Flowers, though, I think. But Michael Pittman kind of profiles a little bit like a Marvin Harrison Jr. in the same way. Marvin Harrison Jr. is more dynamic, a bit more of a deep threat. Michael Pittman's more of that underneath kind of shorter area of the field guy, running slants. But I think we'll put Michael Pittman ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. for now. We'll see next season. Travis Hunter. He is already falling victim to the Jamar Chase can't catch in the preseason narratives, accusations. The rookie minicamp clips are obviously doing the rounds at the moment of recording this 20th of May. Nothing else to talk about. People will talk about anything when there is nothing else to talk about. And yeah, there's a few clips of Travis Hunter running some not great routes. However, I've watched the tape of Travis Hunter. He's fantastic. He looked amazing on tape. I'm not going to panic about that. You shouldn't have with Jamar Chase. I'm not going to with Travis Hunter. I think he has wide receiver 1 potential. He profiles to me like a Garrett Wilson, who we'll see where he ends up. And him and Brian Thomas Jr. are going to be one of the top 4 wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 duos, I think, this year. And Hunter's going to complement Brian Thomas Jr. perfectly, be that more underneath guy, be the intermediate guy. Brian Thomas Jr. can be that more deep threat. I'm going to put Travis Hunter at the good wide receiver 1.5. If I knew that he was going to play wide receiver full time, I would put him just behind Ted McMillan, I think. But considering he might play some corner, might not see as much targets as a result, might not see as many snaps, that is coming into play here. But it really wouldn't shock me if he was going to be in that great tier when it's all said and done. Darnell Mooney. Why did I say Darnell Mooney? It's Brandon Cooks. He has been insanely productive, Brandon Cooks. He has been worth, throughout his career, 3 first-round picks. Drafted by the Saints, traded to the Pats for the first-round pick, traded to the Patriots for a first-round pick, and then traded to the Rams for a first-round pick. He's got 10,000 career receiving yards. This guy's been really productive, which I was surprised by. I thought Brandon Cooks wasn't as good as that, frankly. But what is he now, right? He's turning 32. His last 1,000-yard season was in 2021. I think he's a high-end wide receiver 3 at this point for the Saints. He will realistically be the wide receiver 2, though, because they don't really have anyone else. But I think at this point in his career, it's fair to put him there. Calvin Ridley. I think he could be in for a big year this year with decent quarterback play from Cam Ward at least is what we're hoping for, right? It's not going to be the Will Levis show anymore where he's coughing up the ball to defenses like he's been dared to or match fixing. And I think he will be the clear wide receiver 1, and so we'll see those targets, we'll see those receptions, the touchdowns, the yards, etc., the production that comes from being the natural wide receiver 1 on a team. However, as I've said at the beginning, It's not about the role you play in the offense. It's kind of about what you should be playing. And I think the idea of Calvin Ridley is often better than Calvin Ridley himself. He was at one point underrated. I think that pendulum's now swung way too far the other way. I think he's now overrated. I think he runs very hot and cold. Calvin Ridley's quite unreliable. I think really in an ideal world, he's a high end too. And so I'm going to put him ahead of Debo. I would rather have Ridley than Debo. Yes, I would. Darnell Mooney. He was just shy of 1,000 yards last year, 992, and that's with Drake London on the team and Kyle Pitts. Maybe he'll actually do something for once. Kirk Cousins loved this guy, and I think it's because he is a good wide receiver too. High end? I don't know. I'd rather have Darnell Mooney than Juwan Jennings, but he's a solid wide receiver too. Brian Thomas Jr. Again, another miss from me here. Maybe my wide receiver projections for rookies aren't that great. I doubted him. I didn't think he was a first-round talent. Massive miss from me. He was absolutely electric as a rookie. 87 receptions, 1,282 yards, 10 touchdowns. His speed showed up. He's great versus man coverage, great versus press coverage. He was able to take the top off the defenses consistently. He, in the whole rookie wide receiver class, they were all incredible. Like, as I said, Ladd McConkey, Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas Jr. In any other year, Brian Thomas Jr. would have been in with a real shout to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And it's unfortunate they didn't because he is really, really damn good. I mean, the touchdown he had versus Green Bay from the slot, I think perfectly sums up what he is as a receiver. Just ate up the cushion from the defensive back, who's like the safety, I think, because it was kind of in the red zone. Just ate up that cushion, gave a little shimmy at the top of the route, completely fooled the DB, wide open touchdown. And also the Colts, the play against the Colts, where he just literally ran past the coverage, the Colts defender diving, stretched out, like a great photo, a great moment. Brian Thomas Jr. is absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna say he's a wide receiver one. I'm gonna put him ahead of Ted McMillan. I think if we got a season like Brian Thomas Jr. from Ted McMillan's, I'd be thrilled. So I'm gonna put Brian Thomas Jr. there after just one season. Rashee Rice, great rookie campaign, got injured. We've got some off-field concerns as well. He did have 2 100-yard games before he got injured this season. He's a good yards after the catch threat. He fits that Kansas City Chiefs offense really well. I think he's the definition of a dynamic role player. And I'm going to put him ahead of George Pickens. Oh, Pickens is going to slide here. Kyle Williams. I am high on Kyle Williams. Let me tell you that now. He was my wide receiver 4. He was a top 20 player for me. His releases off the line of scrimmage are insane. He's untouchable. I think that's gonna play in the NFL. And I'm gonna be bold. I'm going to say that he is going to be a wide receiver 1.5 for the Patriots. Maybe not quite as electric as Ladd McConkey's season, but I think that situation is the same, that we're looking at the Patriots wide receiver room and we're like, there's no like alpha threat there. There's no true outside guy. I think Kyle Williams will come in and kind of not be that guy because he doesn't have quite that athletic or physical profile, but I think he's going to be really damn good. And I think he is going to be that wide receiver 1.5 for that team. So clip it. Xavier Worthy. Speedster with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I was an idiot for thinking this wasn't going to immediately like work at a floor level, really. Just shy of 1,000 yards in his rookie season. Had quite a few near misses with Mahomes as well. There are a few times where they just weren't quite on the same page and the ball would kind of land just like 5 yards in front of Worthy. Was that Worthy? Was that Mahomes? It might have been Mahomes considering it was his worst year of his career so far. And look, he still made it to a Super Bowl. But I think if Worthy and Mahomes get on the same page, Worthy's going to be that deep threat that Tyreek was, not for the whole receiving, not the whole body of work. Tyreek could literally win at all 3 levels of the field in Kansas City, but just in terms of that deep threat, right? That, you need a 45-yard field switching play. Worthy's going to be on the end of that. So I think he's a dynamic role player. And I'd rather have Pickens than Worthy, I think, though, as an overall skill set. I'm finding George Pickens really hard to rank, guys, in case you couldn't follow me there. Josh Downs, one of the most underrated receivers in the league. He is such a reliable slot weapon. He's got great hands. He's good after the catch. He's agile. He's a good separator. He's a quarterback's best friend, that security blanket from the slot. He has been victim to a few wayward throws from Anthony Richardson, so that might explain some of the lack of production. But I like what he's done. He's been really solid for Indianapolis the last 2 years. I'm going to say he's a high-end wide receiver too. I'm going to put him just behind Jaden Higgins because I think Higgins will be better overall. Jacoby Myers. He's been rock solid his whole career. I looked up his stats. I was kind of surprised. He consistently puts up 709 to 900 yards in or around that range. And obviously got 1,000 yards last year for the Raiders. Only a 3.6% drop rate on his career. He didn't drop a pass last year. And Jacoby Myers has had a very long career. He's not benefiting from having 0 drops in 1 year and then having a few in the other. Like, he's played for a long time, Myers. Now, he's not dynamic or a special talent necessarily, but he's really solid. He's really solid. And with Geno, I think he's going to be in for a big year. Realistically, though, he's a high end too. I don't think he's a dynamic role player because I don't think he has the dynamism. I'm going to put him behind Jaden Higgins in front of Josh Downs. But I really like Jacoby Myers. Don't think I don't. Ricky Pearsall, he missed the first half of his rookie season with the injury, had a fairly slow start, did finish with a 141-yard game against Detroit, which, if that's a sign of things to come, then we can be very pleased, but it wasn't like that was his only game. I think, though, he is in for a really big leap this year with Deebo Samuel moving on, with Ayuk hopefully coming back healthy and being that 1. I think Pearsall as a 2 could be really good, and they obviously believe in him. They drafted him with a first-round pick last year, and I think with how Shanahan uses motion and how they, just spread the ball to their wide receivers so well, and how Brock Purdy's really good at just spreading the ball, I think Pearsall's going to be in for a big year. I'm going to project him as a high-end 2. I think I'd rather have Pearsall than Ridley, for what it's worth right now. Rashad Bateman. I'm out, guys. I'm out on Rashad Bateman. I've been waiting for a breakout from Bateman since he was drafted in the first round in 2021. I know the Ravens does not run an offense which is helpful to wide receivers produce. And it's always about the ground game or Lamar Jackson or defense, whatever it might be. Receivers are really an afterthought for the Ravens, unfortunately. He did have 800 yards last year, which is good. But, I mean, guys, we've seen enough of this, right? I'm not getting my hopes up again. I think we know that Bateman is a wide receiver too. I would put him ahead of Judy, though. I'd put him ahead of Judy. Adam Thielen. I love this guy, man. Uber reliable, has had a fantastic career in terms of just consistently producing. He's held on a lot longer than the other 30-plus receivers have. Probably than DeAndre Hopkins, actually. But he is turning 35. Definitely. I think if you took Adam Thielen, 3 years ago? I think Thielen's 3 years older than Hopkins. Thielen 3 years ago was still a really good wide receiver. I think Thielen now at 35 is realistically a wide receiver 3, but his game IQ and his just savviness and veteran, understanding of the game will play. Probably rather have Nick Westbrook-Ikhine though, which is insulting to Adam Thielen and his legacy. I know, but it's not about his legacy. It's about 2025. Malik Nabers. He is a clear wide receiver 1, so dynamic. 165 targets, that was second in the league, and 109 receptions, which was third in the league in his rookie season. That is record-breaking rookie numbers. He also did that while missing 2 whole weeks due to a concussion. He was second in yards per route run among all rookies. He was the only, depending on how you see Tyrone Tracy Jr., the only positive weapon really for the Giants. I think Tyrone Tracy is a good running back, but he's not that dynamic in and of himself. Malik Nabers is absolutely fantastic. And I know exactly where I'm going to put him because I think it has to be ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. I would have Nabers ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. as a receiver. And I think that with his agility, his separation skills, his threat, him being a threat with the ball in his hand, give this guy decent quarterback play and he's going to produce. If we had Malik Nabers and Trevor Lawrence instead of Daniel Jones, Malik Nabers would have put up astronomical numbers. And if he wasn't the only decent option on his team, so that defense couldn't just sell out against Nabers and stop the whole offense, then we might have seen more from him as well. But no, I'm going to put. Do I think Nabers? He can do it like the elites can. He looked elite, but then would I have to put Brian Thomas Jr. in there as well because he looked just as good? Would I have Nabers or Nacua? That's so hard. I'm finding this great tier really difficult. Would I have Drake London that highly as well? Oh man, this is rough. I'm going to put Drake London, I think, behind, Brian Thomas Jr. I think that looks fair to me. Talking about rookie campaigns though, Lad McConkey. Now Nabers was second in yards per out run. Guess who was first? It's your boy LADD McConkey. if you know the TikTok song, which I hope you do. He was just shy of 3 yards per route run, which is crazy. He was 4th in receiving yards at 1,346. This guy was cooking dudes in man coverage and zone coverage. Well, against man specifically, he was chefing them up. Against zone, he's so good at working back to the ball, which creates a really friendly quarterback target, but also means that it sets up yards after the catch opportunities. You have more separation from yourself and the defensive back if you work back to a quarterback, rather than having, say, 1 and they can tackle you as you catch the ball. You might have 3 and you can break said tackle. And I just think his route running ability, his yards after the catch ability, and his agility was on clear display. 476 yards after the catch as a receiver who is smaller, who is lighter. I had him as my wide receiver 6 in a really stacked wide receiver class, but I did have him as a first-round player, and I'm really glad I did because he is absolutely fantastic. Now, he's not an elite wide receiver 1 because he is mostly used from the slot, but he is definitely a wide receiver 1B. So, for that, he gets to go in the great category, and I think you have to. You have to have those 3 guys next to each other. You have to have Nabers, Thomas, and McConkey next to each other. But Drake London behind Lad McConkey, I don't know about that. Let's put Drake London back. That's hard. Let me know how you'd rank those guys. Hollywood Brown, I think Ryson Worthy, he's a fitting wide receiver 3. We'll put him ahead of Brandon Cooks as well. Yeah, we will. He's got a bit of speed to him. Michael Wilson, look, put some respect on Michael Wilson's name. He is decent. Realistically, he's a wide receiver 3. I'd have him ahead of Hollywood Brown, though. But he's really not that bad. Jalen Waddle, now, he did not have a great 2024, but he's had 3 1,000-yard seasons before this year. He's obviously got the jets on him, right? Speed to burn. And he is helped by the offensive scheme, we have to say. But what does his future look like in this offense now? Will Tyreek Hill take a step back? Now the Dolphins are kind of pivoting to being heavier in kind of every facet of their game. They've brought in Nick Westbrook-Akine. They've added more depth to their offensive line. They've added more depth to their defensive line. Are they going to kind of are they going to look to retool and shift the offense? I don't really know what that's going to look like this year for the Dolphins, really. Now, I think it is clear that he's a dynamic receiving threat. The speed is unbelievable. Obviously, if he catches the ball, he can score at any point when he catches the ball. He's really, really damn good. He's really, really damn quick. I think he's a classic wide receiver 1.5. And I'll put him ahead of Zay Flowers, definitely. But I think that's a really fair ranking for Jalen Waddle. Quentin Johnson, rough, man. He's rough. He kind of showed a little bit of life in 2024. But I mean, I think the only reason why we even saw any of him is just because there wasn't enough receivers for him to be benched for, enough competent receivers on that Chargers team for him to be benched. First round draft picks come with benefits. You are less likely to be benched if you're crap. Now, he has bad hands. 6 drops and a 30% contested catch rate for a 6'3" wide receiver. I know that's not his game. I know he's got more of an underneath guy and needs that kind of Amon-Ra usage. I think we saw him at his best last year when he was running those kind of shallow crosses and slants and things like that. But man, I mean, I just think he's going to be a wide receiver 3 behind Trey Harris. And I'm not going to have him ahead of Michael Wilson, frankly. That's what we've seen of Quentin Johnston. Devontae Adams, he's older, 32, but this guy's still got it. I said we'd talk about older wide receivers, and Devontae Adams is going to still be a really good wide receiver because the way he wins, it's about release packages, it's about route running, it's about game IQ, it's about those nuances of playing the wide receiver position. And he's still got that. That does not deteriorate. The physical tools might. If you're a speedster like Tyreek Hill, who we're going to look at next, that might decline. And obviously, you will lose a step or 2 here. But the way that Adams wins is going to translate. And I think the game IQ as well for Adams, pairing with Matthew Stafford, those old wily veterans, that's going to really count for something. I genuinely believe that. He is still fantastic at in-breaking routes, ins, digs, curls. I think Nacua might see more time in the slot to keep Adams out of the slot. But I think he's going to be great this year. I think he really is going to be great. I think he's going to be a wide receiver 1.5 still behind Nacua. Now, Tyreek Hill, talking about someone that might lose a step, talking about someone that I really don't know what they're going to be like. I have no idea where I'm going to put Hill. He has been a top 3 wide receiver the last 4 years. He had 1,861 yards in 2023. He's had 7 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. That is wild. That is absolutely wild. His speed is different, even for the NFL. Jalen Waddle is fast, right? Devon Achane is fast. Tyreek Hill's speed, I've not seen speed on the field like it. I've genuinely not seen that. And he plays well above his size. He's not just a small, deep threat. He can go up and get the ball. When Hill at his peak was the best wide receiver in the league, I think. Now, he also took a step back last year, as did Jalen Waddle. Was that due to the Dolphins' offense, or was that due to maybe them kind of it being exposed a little bit in the offensive system? I don't know. But he's still such a threat with the ball in his hands. He's still got his speed. Defensive coordinators have had multiple sleepless nights going against this guy. So he's still got it, but he's not getting any younger. And I can't sleep on that fact. But equally, speed kills. I think, man, I'll still put him at the top here as a wide receiver 1.5. I just don't know what we're going to get from Hill this year. I really don't. But I think, no, we're going to leave him there. We're going to leave him there. I mean, him behind McMillan, I know is kind of crazy. That's what I was thinking about. But yeah, I can't justify that. I can't justify him ahead of McMillan. So I'll put him there. Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the league. Let's cut to the chase here. Spoiler alert, he's the best wide receiver in the league. He ticks every box. Route running, traits, production, hands, threat at all three levels of the field, release packages, kills man coverage, exposes zone coverage. When you need a play to be made, you want Justin Jefferson. At any level of the field, you want Justin Jefferson, I think. He's just that good. That play against Buffalo 2 years ago now, unbelievable. He's never not had a 1,000-yard season. He's averaged almost 15 yards per reception this year. You throw the ball to Justin Jefferson, you're getting a first down and then some. He is just so explosive, so good. I've seen him in London now twice, might be 3 times with the Vikings coming back, might be 4 times if I'm going to Dublin. He's one of the best to do it. And he's still young. He's still got time to show he could be even better. Even when he gets injured and misses time, he still puts up 1,000 yards. He's just so good. He's so good. Jameson Williams, we've seen some signs of life from him. That's good in 2024. Had 1,000 yards. Showed speed. That speed, which does kill in the NFL. Had it in the deep game. Also had it in in the rushing game as well. A few end arounds, a few pop passes here and there as well, which he was really good on as well. Wide receiver 2 potential. I think I need to see a bit more from him to call him a high-end wide receiver 2. I'll put him behind Darnell Mooney and Juwan Jennings. But I think we have a lot of reason to be intrigued about Jameson Williams. Xavier Legette, man, again, I said I was higher on him than on Coleman. Not that that counts so much. I think they basically had the same amount of yards. Drops killed Legette. The drops that he had cost the Panthers, I think, at least 2 games off the top of my head. He was asked to be the one, couldn't be that guy. He's not going to be now that Tet's there. I think he's going to be a decent wide receiver 2. I would still have him ahead of Coleman and ahead of Judy, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great. Chris Godwin would have been a stratospheric season from Chris Godwin had he not been injured. He was pumped targets in Liam Cohen's offense. He's been so good for so long. Been a wide receiver 2 behind Mike Evans as a technicality. He's much better than a wide receiver 2. He's pushing 30 now, coming off an injury. But he is still a wide receiver 1.5. Would I have Godwin ahead of Waddle? I would have Godwin ahead of Waddle. I think he's more reliable and more versatile in how he wins. So yes, I would. Khalil Shakir is legit. Let it be known. I'm not sure why more people aren't talking about Khalil Shakir. Maybe because he's a smaller, mostly slot wide receiver. But he was sick last year. He was so good. He had 995 yards. 704 of those were after the catch. That was second in the NFL among all wide receivers. He was 11th in reception among all wide receivers. He's tough. He's shifty. He's pinballing off defenders to pick up extra yards. Buffalo doesn't have a wide receiver 1 who can play outside. But I think that Shakir is the poster boy, the definition of dynamic role player. And I'm going to put him ahead of Matthew Golden, if I can move Matthew Golden. There we go. I can, and I have. Stephon Diggs. He's older. He's coming off an injury, but I think he's going to be decent. I think he's going to be that reliable option for Drake May. I think he is going to lose some juice, but again, he's that wily veteran who doesn't have the best athletic profile, so doesn't necessarily rely on that to win. And I think we're going to see a decent season from him. I just don't think we're going to see 1,000 yards. So I'll call him a high-end 2 at this point, if I can stop getting that thing up. And I'd put him ahead of Pearsall. I think, but I'd have Diggs ahead of Worthy. I would. So we'll bump him up. We'll call him a dynamic role player. Because if Carl Williams will be that 1.5. T. Higgins. He's the best wide receiver 2 in the league. He can be the wide receiver 1 if Chase is injured or if Chase is being blanketed in coverage. He had 131 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Broncos last year. He had 148 yards and 1 touchdown versus the Chargers last year when Chase was struggling, especially in the Broncos game. And he is a wide receiver 2, but he's a wide receiver 1 cosplaying as a wide receiver 2. I think he is great. Or is he? No, he's great. He's a wide receiver 1. He's not a wide receiver 1.5. But he's at the bottom end of that, I would say. So we'll put him there. Chris Olave. He's shown he's a very good wide receiver. He's still only 24 years old. He's flashed high potential. There's a lot of opportunity in that Saints room. However, a lot of injuries, right? Those head injuries, the concussions in particular, are really serious. They stack and they can get worse, and they are really jeopardizing the long-term outlook of his career at this point. Got to be really careful with that. I think he could be a lot better than where I'm going to put him. But with injuries and with inconsistencies and with time missed, I'm going to say he's a high-end 2. I'd have him ahead of Calvin Ridley, though. And I would have him ahead of Ricky Pearsall as well. Yeah, I would. Wan'Dale Robinson, right, he's a totally acceptable wide receiver 3. We'll put him there. Alan Lazard. Why? I only put him in this to kind of hate on him. I'm sorry. I'm a hater. In the year of our Lord 2025, Alan Lazard does not need to be spoken about. He's going at the bottom of wide receiver 3. AJ Brown, he's an elite wide receiver 1, right? Physicality off the charts. Route running is great. Moves so well for someone his size. Fantastic deep threat. Got that size, got that speed. Has yards after the catch. He's just insane. If I needed a play at any point in the field, and I didn't know, I'd take Justin Jefferson. If they're like, right, JJ's got to make a play. Someone's got to make a play. Who are you choosing? I'm choosing Jefferson. However, if the stipulations are someone's got to make a play 15, 20 yards down the field, I would definitely consider AJ Brown there. I think he's so good in that vein. I think he is pretty comfortably the second best receiver in the league behind Justin Jefferson. Eagles fans, you might not like it, but I think that is generally the consensus. If you don't ask Eagles fans who's better out of Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown, I think it's going to be JJ1, AJ Brown 2, but it is really, really close. We go now to his Ole Miss teammate in DK Metcalf. Not quite the same level of success. Still a very good receiver, though. He doesn't have that same agility as Brown, runs more of a one-dimensional route tree as a result. Mostly vertical, rather. He's been pretty consistent, not great, though. I think he's a dynamic role player. I think he's the top end of dynamic role player as well. So we'll put him ahead of Khalil Shakir, because I think he just offers you a bit more than Shakir does. Brandon Ayuk had an elite 2023. Showed he could potentially be a top 7 wide receiver in the NFL. Has been good, before and since 2023 to a degree, especially with that before the injury. But I think the heights that we saw of Ayuk was that single season. I think having Pearsall there with Juwan Jennings, with Cooper Kupp, with Christian McCaffrey rather, with George Kittle, is part of the allure of Brandon Ayuk. I think if you took him out of that offense, he probably wouldn't be quite as good. I think that's the case for quite a few of these receivers, don't get me wrong, but I think that he's not as versatile scheme-wise as the other ones are. So where am I going to put him? I think high-end wide receiver 1.5 is fair. I think there makes sense for Brandon Ayuk. Cooper Kupp. He had 2,400 yards in 2021. That was on PFF. I'm not saying that out loud. I'm not 100% sure that is actually correct, because that just sounds crazy. That's what it said, if I was reading it correctly, which I hope I was. He was an amazing wide receiver. He is now 32. I think he'll be a really solid wide receiver 2. I just don't know who's going to be the wide receiver 1 there. I'd have Kupp still ahead of Darnell Mooney. I think he's a good wide receiver 2. I'm not sure about high end, but then Josh Downs and Jacoby Myers. Ahead of Cup? Oh, I don't know. I think we'll have him ahead of Josh Downs and Jacoby Meyers. We'll put him there. I think that's more fair for Cup. Maybe. So this is Calvin Austin. It was actually meant to be Roman Wilson, for what it's worth. I think we're going to see a big year from Roman Wilson because of that George Pickens being traded away. So I think Calvin Austin is going to be a good wide receiver too, and we'll put him there. It's projection with not Calvin Austin. It's maybe Roman Wilson. AD Mitchell, disappointed by his rookie season. I had really high expectations for him. He was also the victim of some pretty inaccurate Anthony Richardson passes, but he's a great mover. His release off the line of scrimmage, the way that he can just kind of flip that agility switch on and off is just so good. But he really was lacking refinement, really lacking consistency, and just really lacking the end product, I think. Like, he had a lot of concentration drops, 14.7%. That is too high. He wasn't at the right landmarks at the right time, too focused on kind of like making the guy miss with the release rather than actually being at the right point to receive the ball. And I think he's really talented, and I think he could take a jump, but we need to see him take that jump. I think I would have him... We'll put him here. I think that's fair for where I have Josh Downs. I think Josh Downs right now is better than AD Mitchell. Jamar Chase. I think, again, Bengals fans might not agree, but I think that overall, Chase is top three, and I think he's the third, after Jefferson, after Brown. Jamar Chase, obviously last year, led the league in receiving yards. He was unbelievable. I think he needed that season to really show that he belonged in this tier. I think there's a lot of promise, a lot of hype, a lot of flashes with Chase, and I think last year we saw him put it all together. He is just so damn good. And like I say, him and T. Higgins, if you're looking at these logos now, the Bengals are the team with two in the top two tiers. And then you've got the Rams after that, and you might have the Jags after that. But it's pretty obvious that the Bengals have the best wide receiver duo in the league, I would say. Even with Hill and Waddle, even with Brown and Smith and Devonta Smith, who I don't have Devonta Smith on this list. So I would put Devonta Smith as a great receiver for what it's worth. Imagine him here after Tetero McMillan. Okay, Eagles fans, I got you covered. Jaden Reed, he actually had a pretty good season last year, Jaden Reed. Now, why people will be a bit lower on him is because he ended the season with quite a lot of drops. He had, I think, like 14 drops when it was all said and done, and that really killed it, or 10 drops. But like, he was good down the field. He was really good in contested catch situations. He had a 67% contested catch rate. He really played above his means. He might see a decline now because obviously Matthew Golden will take that deep threat role potentially. So yeah, Reed, I think he's a good 2. I'll put him behind Cup, I think. CeeDee Lamb, Lamb's better than Collins, I think. Let's not be too much of a homer. I think that's fair for Lamb. I think the way Lamb is a little bit different to JJ, AJ Brown, and Jamar Chase. He operates more from the slot, which is fine. It works really well there. But he does play the game a little bit differently. He's great after the catch. He's good in contested catch situations. He's a great route runner. He's a fantastic wide receiver. I do have George Pickens, sorry. But yeah, I just think that CeeDee Lamb, I think those 4 are comfortably the best 4. Nico Collins might be kind of like that outside guy. I might be being a bit of a homer there by putting him there. But I think Lamb is pretty comfortably a top 4 receiver in the league. And I think with George Pickens there now, we're going to see him at his best. Because last year, if you eradicated CeeDee Lamb, there was no Cowboys offense. And that resulted in Lamb's worst production season. It resulted in a terrible Cowboys season. So CeeDee Lamb is definitely capable of carrying a team because how he goes, the team goes. He's an elite wide receiver, no questions asked. Jack Besh, one of my favorite receivers in the draft. I think he's going to be a really good 2. He might even be a dynamic role player, but for now, I'll just project him to be a high-end 2. I'll put him behind Higgins just because I'm too much of a homer to admit that, but I really like Jack Besh. I think he could really carve out a nice role for himself in this Raiders offense. And I think, Jacoby Myers, I think they're right there together. So we'll put Besh and Myers together like that, just to really drive that home. Rome Odunze, again, a pretty underwhelming rookie campaign from Odunze. Caleb Williams had a disaster class. The Bears' offense was awful. I think that with Ben Johnson, he's going to see that improve. He was good in contested catch situations, but definitely was not even more underwhelming, I would say, than what's his face for the Cardinals? Where is he? I've got too many receivers in my head. Marvin Harrison Jr. But I still believe in what I saw on tape. And I still think that he could be a really good wide receiver 1.5. So I'm going to put him right next to Marvin Harrison Jr. Cedric Tillman, again, we saw flashes from him. I think he's a wide receiver 2. I'm happy to put him next to Jerry Judy. I think they're both, they play the game very differently, don't get me wrong. Tillman's more of that big body guy. Judy's more dynamic, but they're wide receiver 2s. DJ Moore, that's an interesting one. I don't think DJ Moore is great, dare I say. I think he's good. I think he's better than Chris Godwin, but I don't think he's great. I don't think DJ Moore is great. Is that? Yeah, looking at those guys who are in the great tier, I think DJ Moore is a tier below that. He's up there. I think he's there with Brandon Ayuk, say, but yeah, I don't think he's great. Panthers fans, let me know what you think. Luther Burden, I think he's going to be a high end 2. I think he'll be a 3, but I think he has the potential to be a high end 2. And I'd have him ahead of Chris Olave as well, I think. Darius Slayton, look, serviceable, comes back every time. But realistically, I think he's also a 3 at his best. You want him as a 3, I think. JSN, he's a really good slot receiver now. He, last year, was what I thought he would be immediately coming out. Had a bit of a tricky transition to the NFL. But him and Kupp are both slot guys. So I don't know how that's going to work. But I think he's a dynamic slot player. So, and I think he's, yeah. I'm going to put him ahead of DK Metcalf. I'd rather have JSN than DK, I think. Mike Evans, 1,000-yard seasons be damned. He's good, right? Aging, just got there last year. Realistically, he's a wide receiver 1.5 at this point in his career. Would I have I'd have Mike Evans still in, and I think that's fair. It's really filling up now, though. Terry McLaurin, I think Terry McLaurin is great. I think Terry McLaurin is really underappreciated. I think he's really good. I think he just does not get the hype he deserves. Underrated coming out in the draft, underrated now in the league. His catches that he makes, the concentration he has to make some of those insane catches, absolutely unbelievable. Elikai Omano, I think, is going to be a good 2 for the Titans this year, next to Calvin Ridley. Could he even be better than that? There was an injury, which is why he fell, so he might not see the same amount of playing time, but I think he's going to be really good this year. And Emeka Egbuka, I think he's going to be a high-end guy as well. We'll put him next to Luther Burden. I wasn't as high on Egbuka, and it's interesting in that offense how they're all going to fit together. Godwin, Evans, and Egbuka. But projecting him, I think he's a high-end 2. And finally, man, on one of my favorite players, and that's Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson is comfortably a top 10 receiver. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think he's better than Malik Nabers. So we're going to put him ahead of him there. So now, before I finish, you can see them all there. Let's go over the top 10 wide receivers just to make sure I have this right. So my wide receiver 1, Justin Jefferson. 2, AJ Brown. 3, Jamar Chase. 4, CeeDee Lamb. I like those 4. Feel good about that. 5, Nico Collins. I think he's in his kind of like that, almost a tier of his own. Amon-Ra St. Brown at 6. Puka Nacua 7. Drake London 8. Garrett Wilson 9. Is Malik Nabers top 10 now? Would I rather? I kind of think so. Honestly, I kind of think so. I think Wilson and Nabers are very similar, actually. I like what I've got here. I like these first 2 tiers a lot. I like this wide receiver 1.5 tier a lot. I know there's going to be some projection here. I know people aren't going to agree, but let me know your thoughts. Who have I missed out on entirely? Is there someone I've completely disrespected who is a great wide receiver 2 who I've not mentioned? Let me know in the comments. Do you think that someone else should be in those top tiers? Do you think someone else deserves to be higher or lower? Let me know in the comments. Let me know all your thoughts. And make sure you subscribe for more off-season content. I'm going to do tight end rankings, running back rankings, edge rusher rankings. They're all going to be coming at you this off-season. So make sure you subscribe to stay in the loop for that. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe. I've been your host, Dom Corbs. This has been Corbs NFL. I'll see you on the next video.